Alain Delon. Alain Fabien Maurice Marcel Delon was born in Sceaux November 8, 1935, died in Haussement-Corbin, August 18, 2024, was a French actor, director, and film producer with Swiss citizenship. He was considered one of the greatest sex symbols in history, as well as one of the greatest French actors, on a par with Jean Gabin or Jean-Paul Belmondo, the latter considered his eternal media rival in France in the 60s. Son of Fabien Delon 1904-1977, director of a small neighborhood cinema, Lou Regina, and his mother Edie Turnold 1911-1995. A young pharmacy clerk, the Delon family is originally from Saint Vincent-le-Spinasse of Tarn-Garonne. His beauty derived from his bewitching appearance, angelic face, and hypnotizing icy eyes allowed him to play dark, mysterious, solitary men, who very often even turned out to be autobiographical of their interpreter. In 1939, when Elena was just 4 years old, her parents divorced and her father practically disappeared for several years. Despite their great affection, it was her mother who entrusted Len to an adoptive family whose father was a prison guard at Fraynes prison. During that period Alain witnessed the shooting of the collaborationist Pierre Laval, an experience that on the one hand disturbed him but on the other fascinated him. He was 8 years old, unable to stay with his adoptive family and unable to return to his mother. He lives in the nuns' college in Issales-Moulineaux, where he will meet one of his dearest friends, Gerard Salome, with whom he will spend his entire youth. Because of his perpetually rebellious nature, due by his own admission to the trauma suffered from his parents' separation, he gets bad grades at school, and for this reason he is forced to change several institutes. At the age of 14 he leaves school. His mother, remarried to a master butcher, Paul Bologna, directs him as an apprentice butcher in his stepfather's butcher's shop, where Alain immediately feels at ease, quickly becoming one of the most profitable employees. Also at the age of 14 he acted in Le Rapt, a short film directed by the father of one of his friends. At the age of 17, subverting all the initial goals of becoming a master pork butcher and taking the place of his stepfather, he decides to enlist in the French Navy. In the Marsouins, the Marine Infantry. In 1953 he was sent to Indochina in Southeast Asia as part of the French Military Expeditionary Force in the Indochina War. After 3 years he was expelled from the Navy after having totaled 11 months in prison for indiscipline. Returning to France in 1956, Delon had to face a situation of economic hardship. Doing the most disparate jobs such as porter, clerk, waiter in the bad neighborhoods of Montmartre and Alice, by his own mission he ended up being a bohemian always in Montmartre. Thanks to his passion for the young actress Brigitte Aubert, he moves away from this world and meets the actor Jean-Claude Briony, who invites him to the Cannes Film Festival, where his candid and at the same time glacial beauty does not go unnoticed. He moves to Rome, where he shares an apartment with Giampaolo Barbieri, who will become a famous photographer, and is offered a contract that could take him to Hollywood, as long as he learns English. Despite Alain starting an English course in France, the trip is cancelled. When the director is a French screenwriter, Valagret convinces him to work for him. Valagret debuts Alain in the film Godot 1957. In the same year the young actor joins the cast of the film Fatti Bella e Tassi, in which he duets for the first time with Jean-Paul Belmondo, while his first real leading role will come in 1958 with La Mantipura, on the set of which he meets the Austrian actress Romy Schneider, with whom, despite their initial mutual distrust, he begins a long romantic relationship. The relationship between the two ended in 1964, and in 1962 he flirts with the singer Nico, but Delon has never acknowledged the paternity of his son, Christian Aaron Bologna, born in 1962, who, after the first years of his life spent with his mother Nico, was adopted by Delon's mother. Young, beautiful and successful, they are the golden couple of French cinema, and the public follows them with interest both at the cinema and in the newspapers. Despite the film with Schneider not being appreciated by the critics, Delon is still the main actor in two films by Michel Boisron, Women Are Weak and Fury of Living, both released in 1959, in which he plays the part of the young heartbreaker, handsome and charming. However, it was thanks to René Clémenty that Alain Delon would experience his first real success as a protagonist with Purple Noon, based on a novel by Patrice Highsmith, which would in fact earn him the consecration of a star. The film would achieve excellent box office receipts and would make Delon's name known beyond the French borders. The meeting with Luchino Visconti was a fundamental step towards his international consecration. In 1960, in fact, he was one of the protagonists of the masterpiece by the Italian director Rocco and His Brothers, where he embodies a pure and tolerant character, so far from those who would become his typical roles. The film achieved a resounding success by winning the Silver Lion in Venice, making Visconti take Delon under his wing. Becoming one of the main mentors for the actor in Italy, Delon immediately asserts himself also in other works of great artistic value, such as Elegance 1961 by Michelangelo Antonioni, in which Delon duets with Monica Vitti, dusting off the character of the heartbreaker already adopted in France with René Clément. At the Cannes Film Festival the film wins the jury prize. In the same year he is called again by Clément for the comedy Che Gioia Vivere 1961, focused on the adventures of two young people. On the eve of the March on Rome he takes part in an episode of the comedy Le Tentazione Quotidiano by Julien Duvivier. The following year comes the international consecration. In Luchino Visconti's The Leopard, Delon plays Prince Tancredi Falconeri and stars alongside personalities such as Bart Lancaster and Claudia Cardinali. Dear Uncle, if the applause is not thunderous it is only because he is a lion of your species. Instilling respect does not encourage inappropriateness. Awarded with the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival, the film obtains an international echo and contributes to shaping the icon of Delon, who wins a nomination for the Golden Globe as Best New Actor. Returned to France, but already definitively consecrated as one of the greatest actors of the moment, Alain Delon is often cited by many as the most handsome man in the world. The actor subsequently returns to France to affirm his icon also in his homeland. In these years he had the opportunity to act with Jiang Bin, whom he considered his idol and cinematographic point of reference. In Big Shot at the Casino 1963 there is Rivernale. Initially the role of Delon was given to Jean-Louis Trintignant, but Delon, in order to act with Gabin, offered to work for free. The relationship with Schneider ended abruptly. In 1964 Delon married the actress Francine Canovas, who would take the stage name of Nathalie Delon, with whom he had his second son. Anthony Delon, born in 1964, also an actor who would make him a grandfather in 1986 of the model Alison Leborgs. The two divorced in 1968. In the 2 months before the wedding, Delon began a relationship with the actress Marissa Melk. According to some sources, he left the day before the wedding with Natalie. The films The Black Tulip 1964 by Christian Jack, one of the biggest box office successes of the year, and Chrysanthemums for a Crime will follow. Per 4 films a year. The most noteworthy are Three Steps in Delirium 1967, in the episode William Wilson directed by Louis Malle, and the blockbuster Paris Burns 1966 by Clement. Again in the mid-60s, Delon acts for the first time in Hollywood 3 productions. They have a certain public success: The Last Murder 1965 by Ralph Nelson, alongside Margaret and Vaniflin, Neither Honor Nor Glory 1966 by Mark Robson, together with Antony, Queen, and Texas Across the River 1966 by Michael Gordon, in which he shares the scene with Dean Martin. However, the real consecration in France will come thanks to Jean-Pierre Melville, who calls him to play the hitman Frank Costello in Frank Costello Face D'Angelo, 1967. The success of Alain Delon in the 70s gives rise in France to a media rivalry with the other French star Jean-Paul Belmondo. In addition to being called to work in Italy for big Hollywood productions, but without ever really making it big, while in France he is one of the most profitable actors, together with Louis de Funès and his rival colleague Belmondo. In this same period he tries his hand at theater, but also launches into other adventures. He buys the restaurant La Camargue in Nice and produces the film Ellen Sumis, directed by Alain Cavalier. By now established and very popular, Delon becomes one of the main faces of the polar genre, the French equivalent of the Italian detective story. From 1968 to 1983 he had a relationship with the actress Mireille d'Arc, met during the filming of Farewell Jeff. During the last years of his relationship with the D'Arc, Delon carried on some flirtations with the actresses Veronique Jeannot, Sylvia Crystal, Sidney Ram, and Delilah de Lazaro. The highest point of Polar will be reached with The Clan of the Sicilians 1969 by Henry Vernal, in which he shares the scene again with Jean Gabin. Cadilhome plays the role of Roger Sartet, a professional hitman who falls in love with the wife of the son of, and boss Vittorio Milanese Gabin. The film was a success both in France and in the United States of America and Canada. In the same year he is involved in the investigation into the mysterious murder of his bodyguard. A story that reveals behind the scenes of sex and drugs in his entourage, and that ends up increasing the fame of a difficult actor. In 1970, in fact, Borsellino is released. First film starring in a duo with Jean-Paul Belmondo, which will prove to be the biggest financial success of the year in France. Over 35 million euros gross, thanks above all to the feeling of the couple of two of the most popular actors of that period. Borsellino is also the first film produced by Delon himself through his Dell Productions. In the same year he collaborates again with Jean-Pierre Melville, Les Miséns un Homme, in which he is the protagonist together with Jean-Marie Vallant and Yves Montand. Upon its release, the film is received coldly by international critics, but will be re-evaluated years later and labeled as one of the best works of the French director. In 1971 he also tried his hand at comedy, although with poor results, with the film The Man from Saint Michel, in which he starred alongside his ex-wife Nathalie Delon. He worked alongside Charles Bronson, Tashirmi Foon, and Ursula Andress in The Western Red Sun, while he rediscovered his interest in auteur cinema in 1972 with The First Night of Quiet. Directed by Valerio Zerlini in the role of Professor Daniele Dominici, who falls in love with one of his students in the mid-70s, the French actor almost exclusively acts in violent crime films in which the characters become increasingly stereotyped and monotonous. Death of a Carrion in 1977, or in international productions of lesser importance. Airport 80 in 1979, in 1974 Borsellino and Sceaux. The less successful sequel to Borsellino, in which this time he no longer shares the scene with Belmondo, but with Riccardo Cucciella, and the following year Zorro 1975 by Duccio Tessari, where he plays the famous masked vigilante. As a producer he is satisfied, so much so that he declares that if the title appears, flick, success is guaranteed. One of the greatest successes as a producer comes in 1976 with Conflict's story together with Jean-Louis Trintignant, again directed by Jack Dry. In the 80s he shoots together with the Italian actress Dalila Di Lazzaro the film Tre Uomini da Abbattu, again directed by Jack Dry. Film Nest of Spies, which turned out to be one of the highest-grossing films in the history of Soviet cinema, with over 47.5 million viewers that year, is his directorial debut with For the Skin of a Policeman, which he also wrote and produced and starred in with his future partner Anne Perillo. The film was a good success at the box office. Subsequently, the actor was briefly linked to the actress Anne Perillo. From 1982 to 1984 Ale to Catherine Pironi, Alain Delon in 2007, with Ornella Muti and Jeremy Irons shoots the literary-inspired film A Love for Swan 1994, directed by Volker Schlandorf, is based on the homonymous work by Marcel Proust. Baron Charles is a defeated man, immersed in memories, overwhelmed by nostalgia and contempt for modern times, and he joins the new characters that the actor will play for the following years, namely that of the defeated, the deluded, the failed men. For some characters the actor brings his personal experience linked to the recent loss of his first love, Romy Schneider, which occurred in 1982. In 1985 he moved to Switzerland, obtaining citizenship towards the end of the 90s with his new partner, the Dutch model Rosalie van Bremen, with whom he had 2 children, Anoukka Delon, born in 1990, and Alain Fabien Delon, born in 1994. In 2001 the two broke up. In the third millennium Alain Delon found a new companion, a Japanese woman named Hiromi. In the early 90s Delon began to appear less and less on the big screen, and the roles he played were mostly secondary. The only leading role of this period was in The Return of Casanova 1992, in which he played the famous adventurer in exile in Venice in the 90s. The takings of his films were modest, so much so that in 1997 the actor made it clear that he wanted to end his career, but later agreed to work again for cinema and television. Of some note in this period are the participations in Nouvelle Vague 1991 by Jean-Luc Godard, in 101 Nights 1995 by Agnes Varda, and in the ironic Conte Uno of 2998 by Patrice Lee, again alongside Belmondo after the announcement of his retirement. In the early 2000s the actor takes part in only one film on the big screen. Actors, directed again by Bertrand Blair, ended after 15 years the connection with Mireille d'Arc. Only in the early 2000s the actor debuts on television. Accepting Jean Clodizzo's proposal to return to the role of the tormented policeman, that of Fabio Montale of the Marseille Police, in which the actor manages to return to success in conjunction with the sentimental crisis and the separation from his partner Rosalie, Delon reveals to the press his struggle with depression, an illness that brought him to the brink of suicide. In 2008 he returned to the cinema playing with self-irony Julius Caesar in Asterix at the Olympic Games. But with a laconic and cheeky Avim he finally bids farewell to the big screen. Despite his retirement from the cinema he continues to tread the stage, but in May 2017 he surprisingly announces his return to the cinema acting in one last film after almost 10 years from his last appearance on the big screen. The film in question will be directed by Patrice Leconte and will also feature actress Juliette Binoche. Regarding his retirement, Delon said, "I am the age I am, I have had the career I have had, now I want to close the circle by organizing boxing matches. I have seen men who regretted having fought one fight too many. For me there will not be one too many. On May 19, 2019 at the 2019 Cannes Festival. He receives the honorary Palme d'Or. A month later, he suffers a stroke, followed by a cerebral hemorrhage. My whole life is there, in the graves of my dogs. In these words you can see all the love that Alain Delon had for his four-legged friends. And in the land of his home, in Auschwitz, throughout his life, they found eternal rest. About 50 dogs, each with its own tombstone, with its name. Couples buried together? A cemetery to have them close to him forever. An eternal place where the French actor himself asked to be buried. Alain Delon died of lymphoma in his home in Haussmont-Corben on August 18, 2024. The announcement was made by his children.